There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of the skin trade of George R. R. Martin's skin trade. Wolves, 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 wolves. It's werewolves. We're talking about werewolves. And yes, I am wearing my pickle helm. Blood and Iron built this city. If you were so, quick recap from the first one. Where we left off, there has been a string of murders in the city. 2 women have been killed, their skin flayed. There is a murder investigation going on. A suspect has been named, Roy Helander. He was a convenient scapegoat for crimes committed years back when he was a teenager. There was a string of child abductions. We are following our 2 protagonists, Willie Flambeau, who is a werewolf, and Ronnie Wade, who is a human detective. Willie is a debt collector, but also a werewolf, and Ronnie is a private investigator. And there seems to be a connection between the murders that are going on and the death of Ronnie's father years and years back. Her father did not. Randy Wade, thank you. Randy. Randy's father did not believe the narrative that Roy Helander was the culprit. He was a convenient scapegoat, and that has led to his death. Yes, it is. I misspoke. It was Randy. I have it in front of me. It's right there. It even says it right there. Well, I'm dumb. Okay. But anyway, so there is one of our villains, Jonathan Harmon, loves the phrase blood and iron, which I talked about last time. Comes from the blood and iron speech by the Iron Chancellor, Otto von Bismarck. He led, him and the Kaiser are the ones who would lead the unification of the German states into the nation state of Germany, and then later into the German Empire that lasts until the end of World War I. That's the pickle helm. I am German. I am very, very, very German. My father's side of the family, completely 100% German. My mom's side of the family, German, Irish, Hungarian. My great-grandfather, in fact, the story of my family's coming to America, at least my great-grandfather's side, is he fought for the Germans in World War I. He wore the pickle helm. He escaped. He left Germany in the 1920s during the German Depression and made it to America just in time for the American Depression. So the story of my great-granddad on the losing side, a man who could not catch a break, but luckily got out of Dodge before the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. So at least he was spared from all of that. But that phrase does come up a lot, and it will come up again because Willie is now going to head to Blackstone Manor. We have a werewolf behind enemy lines, which is exactly what the Werewolf division of the Schutzstaffel did. These were the fanatic guys who would go on basically suicide missions, and Willie is going to be inverting this because he is a Frenchman going behind German lines, so he's more like a French resistance fighter, if anything. And he will be going to Blackstone Manor. That is where Roy Helander was found. Roy Helander, the scapegoat from the series of child abductions, has been found murdered at Blackstone Manor, ripped apart, and wearing the skin of one of these women who was killed, Joni. Joni was a werewolf, and it is now learned that if you skin a werewolf, flay their skin, and wear it, you too can become a werewolf. So we will continue where we left off. So yes, the last thing we saw, Roy Hellender's body has been found. Randy said to him last, he was wearing Joni's skin. So continuing where we left off. Willie drove her home. She was in no shape to confront Jonathan Harmon or anybody. She'd calmed down, but the hysteria was still there, just under the surface. He could see it in the eyes, hear it in her voice. If that wasn't enough, she kept telling him the same thing over and over. It was Roy Hellender, she'd say, like he didn't know, and he was wearing Joni's skin. Willie found her keys and helped her upstairs to her apartment. Inside, he made her take a couple of sleeping pills from the all-purpose pharmaceutical in his glove box, then turned down the bed and undressed her. He figured if anything would snap her back to herself, it would be his fingers on the buttons of her blouse. But she just smiled at him, vacant and dreamy, and told him that it was Roy Hellender and he was wearing Joni's skin. The big silver knife jammed through her belt loops gave him pause. He finally unzipped her fly, undid her buckle, and yanked off the jeans, knife and all. She didn't wear panties. He'd always suspected as much. Because Willie is a pervert. When Randy was finally in bed asleep, Willie went back to her bathroom and threw up. Afterward, he made himself a gin and tonic to wash the taste of vomit out of his mouth and went and sat alone in her living room in one of her red velvet chairs. He'd had even less sleep than Randy these past few nights, and he felt as though he might drift off at any moment, but he knew somehow that it was important not to. It was Roy Hellender, and he was wearing Joni's skin. So it was over. He was safe. People are asking, I don't know, and what's it even called if women do that? Like for us, for us men, if we're not wearing underwear, it's free balling. What do you call it when you're not wearing anything beneath? Yeah, especially in jeans. We're starting strong. Is it just going commando? Okay, men use that phrase too. Okay. Free balling or commando. This free balling is great. Free. Disgusting. Okay. All right. We're having fun. He remembered the way his door. Yeah. Germ loves mentioning her nether lips. Fat pink mast. All right. He remembered the way his door shook last night, a solid wood door, and it split like so much cheap paneling. Behind it was something dark and powerful, something that left scars on brass doorknobs and showed up in places it had no right to be. Willie didn't know what had been on the other side of his door, but somehow he didn't think that the gaunt, wasted, half-eaten travesty of a man he'd seen on 13th Street quite fit the bill. He'd believed that his nocturnal visitor had been Roy Hellender, with or without Joni's skin, about the same he believed that the man had been eaten by dogs. Dogs. How long did Jonathan expect to get away with that shit? Still, he couldn't blame him, not with Zoe and Joni dead, and Hellender trying to sneak into Blackstone dressed in a human skin. There are things that hunt the hunters. Willie picked up the phone and dialed Blackstone. Hello? The voice was flat, effectless. The voice of someone who cared about nothing and no one, not even himself. Hello, Stephen, Willie said quietly. He was about to ask for Jonathan when a strange sort of madness took hold of him and he heard himself say, Did you watch? Did you see what Jonathan did to him, Stephen? Did it get you off? The silence on the other end of the line went on for ages. Sometimes Stephen Harmon simply forgot how to talk. But not this time. Jonathan didn't do him. I did. It was easy. I could smell him coming through the woods. He never even saw me. I came around behind him and pinned him down and bit off his ear. He wasn't very strong at all. After a while, he changed into a man, and then he was all slippery. But it didn't matter. Someone took the phone away. Hello? Who is this? Jonathan's voice said from the receiver. Willie hung up. He could always call back later. Let Jonathan sweat a while, wondering who it had been on the other end of the line. After a while, he changed into a man, Willie repeated aloud. Stephen did it himself. Stephen couldn't do it himself. Could he? Oh, Jesus, Willie said. Somewhere, far away, a phone was ringing. Randy rolled over in her bed. Joni's skin, she muttered groggily, in low, half-intelligible syllables. She was naked, with the blankets tangled around her. The room was pitch dark. The phone rang again. She sat up. A sheet curled around her neck. The room was cold and her head pounded. She ripped loose the sheet, threw it aside. Why was she naked? What the hell was going on? The phone rang again and her machine cut in. This is AAA Wade Investigations, Randy Wade speaking. I can't talk right now, but you can leave a message at the tone and I'll get back to you. Randy reached out and speared the phone just in time for the beep to sound in her ear. She winced. It's me, she said. I'm here. What time is it? Who's this? Randy, are you all right? It's Uncle Joe. Joe Urquhart's gruff voice was a welcome relief. Rogoff told me what happened, and I was very concerned about you. I've been trying to reach you for hours. Hours? She looked at the clock. It was past midnight. I've been asleep, I think. The last she remembered, it had been daylight, and she and Willie had been driving down 13th on their way to Blackstone too. It was Roy Hellander, and he was wearing Joni's skin. Randy, what's wrong? You sure you're okay? You sound wretched. Damn it, say something. I'm here, she said. She pushed hair back out of her eyes. Someone had opened her window, and the air was frigid on her bare skin. I'm fine, she said. I was asleep. It shook me up, that's all. I'll be fine. If you say so. Urquhart sounded dubious. Willie must have brought her home and put her to bed, she thought. So where was he? She couldn't imagine that he'd just dump her and then take off. That wasn't like Willie. Pay attention, Urquhart said gruffly. Have you heard a word I've said? She hadn't. I'm sorry. I'm just disoriented, that's all. It's been a strange day. I need to see you, Urquhart said. His voice had taken on a sudden urgency. Right away. I've been going over the reports on Roy Hellander and his victims. There's something out of place, something disturbing. And the more I look at these case files and Cooney's autopsy report, the more I keep thinking about Frank, about what happened that night. He hesitated. I don't know how to say this. All these years, I only wanted the best for you, but I wasn't completely honest with you. Tell me, she said. Suddenly, she was a lot more awake. Not over the phone. I need to see you face to face to show it to you. I'll swing by and get you. Can you be ready in 15 minutes? 10, Randy said. She hung up, hopped out of bed, and opened the bedroom door. Willie, she called out. There was no answer. Willie, she repeated more loudly. Nothing. She turned on the lights, padded barefoot down the hall, expecting to find him snoring away on her sofa, but the living room was empty. Her hands were sandpaper dry, and when she looked down, she saw that they were covered with old blood. Her stomach heaved. She found the clothes she'd been wearing in a heap on the bedroom floor. They were brown and crusty with dried blood as well. Randy started the shower and stood under the water for a good 5 minutes, running it so hot that it burned the way that silver fork must have burned in Willie's hand. The blood washed off, the water turning faintly pink as it whirled away and down. She toweled off thoroughly and found a warm flannel shirt and a fresh pair of jeans, and I'm guessing no panties again. She didn't bother with her hair. The rain would wet it down again soon enough. but she made a point of finding her father's gun and sliding the long silver carving knife through the belt loop of her jeans. So Urquhart is sus. Yes. Every character essentially is sus. So we know that Jonathan Harmon essentially owns this town, or at least what's left of it. Again, this gritty crime noir, the pack is closed. That was like one of the staple features of the city. A lot of people lost their jobs. George wrote this in the late 80s, so we're coming off of the post-Vietnam era, the recessions of the 70s, the fall of Detroit and the other and steel cities and all that. We're going into the gas shortage, OPEC, just and then the first terms, and then Ronald Reagan terms of the 80s. So the crack epidemic, Reaganomics, just all of that. That is the feel. This is the city that has been buried, is a victim of the times that it's going through. But Jonathan Harmon still owns everything that is of any sort of value, such as the paper, and Willie even says at one point, and probably the police too. And yeah, more than likely, like with a lot of cities where one man kind of owns everything, you can sort of expect that the cops and city council and politicians and stuff, they're probably all on the payroll. They're probably all in this billionaire's little black book. We all know how that goes, right? So as she bent to pick up the knife, Randy saw the square of white paper on the floor by her end table. She must have knocked it off when she'd reached for the phone. She picked it up, opened it. It was covered with Willie's familiar scrawl, a page of hurried, dense scribbling. "I gotta go. You're in no condition," it began. Oh, I should be reading this one. "Don't go anywhere. Talk to anyone. Roy Helander wasn't sneaking in to kill Harmon. I finally figured it out. The damned Harmon family secret that's no secret at all. I should have twigged Stephen." That was as far as she'd gotten when the doorbell rang. Willie hugged the ground 2/3 of the way up the bluff, the rain coming down around him and his heart pounding in his chest as he clung to the tracks. Somehow, the grade didn't seem nearly as steep when you were riding the cable car as it did now. He glanced behind him and saw 13th Street far below. It made him dizzy. He wouldn't even have gotten this far if it hadn't been for the tracks. Where the slope grew almost vertical, he had been able to scrabble up from tie to tie, using them like rungs on a ladder. His hands were full of splinters, but it beat trying to crawl up the wet rock, clinging to ferns for dear life. Of course, he could have changed and bounded up the tracks in no time at all, but somehow he didn't think that it would have been such a good idea. "I could smell him coming," Stephen had said. The human scent was fainter in a city full of people. He had to hope that Stephen and Jonathan were inside the new house, locked up for the night. But if they were out prowling around, at least this way, Willie thought he had a ghost of a chance. He'd rested long enough. He craned his head back, looking up at the high black iron fence that ran along the top of the bluff, trying to measure how much further he had to go. Then he took a good long shot off his inhaler, gritted his teeth, and scrambled for the next tie up. So you can see, like, now our burst streams are getting shorter. We're going from very, very quick jumps from one scene to another, from Randy back to Willie, Willie back to Randy. So this is how, like, we're starting to reach our climax. The windshield wipers swept back and forth almost silently as the long, dark car nosed through the night. The windows were tinted a gray so dark it was almost black. Urquhart was in civvies, a red and black lumberjack shirt, dark woolen slacks, and a bulky down jacket. His police cap was his only concession to uniform. He stared straight out into the darkness as he drove. "You look terrible," she told him. "I feel worse." They swept under an overpass and around a long ramp onto the river road. "I feel old, Randy. Like this city. This whole damn city is old and rotten." "Where are we going?" she asked him. At this hour of night, there was no other traffic on the road. The river was a black emptiness off to their left. Street lamps swam in halos of rain to the right as they sailed past block after cold, empty block, stretching away towards the bluffs. To the pack, Urquhart said, to where it happened. To a spot where no one will find you. The car's heater was pouring out a steady blast of warm air, but suddenly Randy felt deathly cold. Her hands went inside her coat and closed her. Oh, hey, demon! Her hand went inside her coat and closed around the hilt of the knife. The silver felt comfortable and comforting. All right, she said. She slid the knife out of her belt and put it on the seat between them. Damon, let's go full screen real quick. Show everyone your handsome face. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, Damon does what he wants. Damon wants to be held in pet. Just show everyone you're handsome. He's so handsome. There he is. Yes, Damon always loves to come on the streams. He loves sitting in the big chair, and he loves his ear scratches. And can they hear you purring? Can they hear you purring? All right, Damon, you do. Yeah, the white tip of his tail, like a little flame, like my little black Charmander. Oh, he's getting plenty of scritches. Getting plenty of scritches. He's in heaven right now. He's purring. He's purring. Okay. She slid the knife out of her belt and put it on the seat between them. Urquhart glanced over. She watched him carefully. What's that? He said. Silver, Randy said. Pick it up. He looked at her. What? You heard me. Pick it up. He looked at the road, at her face, and back out at the road. He made no move to touch the knife. I'm not kidding, Randy said. She slid away from him to the far side of the seat and braced her back against the door. When Urquhart looked over again, she had the gun out, aimed right between his eyes. Pick it up, she said very clearly. And yes, I know, I always wear black shirts. I should wear different ones so that Damon doesn't just disappear and all you can make out are his eyes and his tail. But I own way too much black. The color left his face. He started to say something, but Randy shook her head curtly. Urquhart licked his lips, took his hand off the wheel, and picked up the knife. There, he said, holding it up awkwardly while he drove with one hand. I picked it up. Now what am I supposed to do with it? Randy slumped back against the seat. Put it down, she said with relief. Joe looked at her. He rested for a long time in the shrubs on top of the bluff, listening to the rain fall around him and dreading what other sounds he might hear. He kept imagining soft footfalls stealing up behind him, and once he thought he heard a low growl somewhere off to his right. He could feel his hackles rise, and until that moment he hadn't even known he had hackles, but it was nothing, just his nerves working on him. Willie had always had bad nerves. The night was cold and black and empty. When he finally had his breath back, Willie began to edge past the new house, keeping to the bushes as much as he could, well away from the windows. There were a few lights on, but no other sign of life. Maybe they'd all gone to bed. He hoped so. He moved slowly and carefully, trying to be as quiet as possible. He watched where his feet came down, and every few steps he'd stop, look around, listen. He could change in an instant if he heard anyone or anything coming toward him. He didn't know much of how much good that would do, but maybe, just maybe, it would give him a chance. His raincoat dragged at him, a waterlogged second skin as heavy as lead. His shoes had soaked through, and the leather squished when he moved. Willie pushed away from the house, further back into the trees, until a bend in the road hid the lights from view. Only then, After a careful glance in both directions to make sure nothing was coming, did he dare risk a dash across the road. Once across, he plunged deeper into the woods, moving faster now, a little more heedless. He wondered where Roy Helander had been when Stephen had caught him. Somewhere around here, Willie thought, somewhere in this dark primal forest, surrounded by old growth, with centuries of leaves and moss and dead things rotting in the earth beneath his feet. So you get a lot of feeling, right, of this is like going north of the wall. There's the cable car system. It's a pulley winch system, and it reminds you of how they get up and down the wall. And then once you get north of the wall, where are you? You're in the haunted forest, this haunted primeval forest. When the Night's Watch was a much larger organization, they would cut down the trees for timber, but as the Night's Watch has shrank, the forest has regrown out of control. It's almost, the trees are almost up against the wall again, like nature is reclaiming everything. And we talk many times, like both here and on David Lightbringer streams, how the forest represents the unknown. Hey, Dalton, oh, no. You can stay here. You can't go up there. The Red Kraken has now joined us, and he is much more prone to knocking things over than Damon is. And flapping like, oh yeah, and then his raincoat too is like flapping like the black cloaks that the Night's Watchmen wear. So this is like going north of the wall, but in this case, the others are werewolves, and the wall itself is this Blackstone manor with its new house and its old house, and the old house has a crumbled tower, much like the crumbled tower at Winterfell that got struck by lightning. The imagery is all there. Okay. So, where did we leave off? Night was cold and black and empty when we found. Okay, once across, he plunged deeper into the woods, moving faster now, a little more heedless. He wondered where Roy Helander had been when Stephen had caught him. Somewhere around here, Willie thought, somewhere in this dark primal forest surrounded by old growth. Centuries of leaves and moss and dead things rotting in the earth beneath his feet. Yeah, that's what we like. Okay. As he moved away from the bluff in the city, the forest grew denser, until finally the trees pressed so close together that he lost sight of the sky, and the raindrops stopped pounding against his head. It was almost dry here. Overhead, the rain drummed relentlessly against a canopy of leaves. Willie's skin felt clammy, and for a moment he was lost, as if he wandered into some terrible cavern far beneath the earth, a dismal, cold place where no light ever shone. This is the big one. Okay, so there are a number of times where George uses this imagery with the weirwoods, especially with the weirwood roots. In Bloodraven's Cave, in the lead up to the Black Gate, it's a part where the trees come so close together that they block out the sky and they form a tunnel, sort of a cave. And this is happening right here. As Willie is going up to Blackstone Manor, as he is going into the primeval forest to fight the monster. He is now going through this cavernous tunnel. He's still outside. It's just the trees are so closely packed together, so dense that they form a roof over him. So densely packed that not even the raindrops can get through. So you can imagine this is like Bran. Bran is our wolf, right? Bran is our symbolic wolf. Him going up to the Black Gate through that tunnel underneath the Night Fort, where the weirwood roots are just beginning to form like an actual tunnel. The same for the Crypts of Winterfell, where the carved entrance starts to meet the natural formations, right? Where you'll have weirwood roots heading down deeper and deeper into the crypts. In the last stream I did with David Lightbringer, when I brought up my other 14 weird places in Westeros, Casterly Rock would have a same sort of thing going on. Natural formations, and that along with human carving that lead down into the rock, that lead into the gold mines below. And I'm still of the opinion that I think these subterranean tunnels in Westeros extend all the way down until the weirwoods stop growing. And we know that before they were cut down, the weirwoods grew all over except for Dorne. So I'm still very much of the opinion that these cavernous tunnels like Bloodraven's Cave, that there's a series of tunnels that go all the way from the Frost Fangs down to the Red Mountains. So a dismal place where no light ever shone. And then, of course, there's also the Ashai aspect of this. I'd said this city that Willie is living in, it's like a modern day Ashai. Like if we take Ashai out of a medieval setting and throw it into like a 70s, 80s style city, it would probably be like this rundown place, like where it said in the first reading, out of every 4 houses, 3 have been abandoned. Just like in Ashai, out of every 10 windows, only 1 has a light on. Like the town is huge but abandoned, and that's the feel we're going for again here. Then he stumbled between 2 huge, twisted old oaks and felt air and rain against his face again, and raised his head, and there it was ahead of him. Broken windows gaping down like so many blind eyes from the walls carved from rock that shone like midnight and drank all light and hope. So Blackstone Manor drinks the light and it drinks the hope, just like the oily black stone drinks the light. It's like why the Vale of Shadows only gets 1 hour of sunlight. Even in the heights of summer, Ashai and the Shadowlands are a dark and gloomy place. And here it is, that same idea just writ small, because it's happening with just this one mansion. Why would weirwoods not grow in Dorne? Probably because sand, I'm guessing. Just the terrain. Same reason like weirwoods don't grow in the Iron Islands, because the soil is loose and rocky, and why they can't really grow in the Vale. But they used to be all over, not just the north, but the Stormlands, the Reach, the Westerlands has them, the Riverlands had them. The Vale, the Iron Islands, and Dorne seem to be the ones that couldn't do it, and that's just because of just bad soil, at least bad soil for weirwoods. Because there are plants growing in those places. They're just, it's like how a sunflower can grow out of and other weeds can grow between the cracks of sidewalks, but then you have your indoor plants where if you water it one time too many, the thing's gonna die. Some plants are just fickle. Yeah, I hate sand. It's coarse and it gets everywhere. So the tower loomed up against the storm. The tower loomed up to his right, some monstrous erection against the storm clouds, leaning crazily. Willie stopped. Oh, yes. Jonathan Harmon building this giant Blackstone mansion. It's like an erection. Do you think he's compensating for something? Yeah. Willie stopped breathing, groped for his inhaler, found it, dropped it, picked it up. The mouthpiece was slimy with humus. He cleaned it on his sleeve, shoved it in his mouth, took a hit, 2, 3, and finally his throat opened up again. He glanced around, heard only the rain, saw nothing. He stepped forward toward the tower, toward Roy Hellender's secret refuge. The big double gate and the high chain link fence had been padlocked for 2 years, but it was open tonight, and Urquhart drove straight through. Randy wondered if the gate had been opened for her father as well. She thought maybe it had. So, yeah, more reasons for Urquhart to be sus. Why is the gate open? Why is it on this night? Why are they able to just get through? Joe pulled up near one of the loading docks in the shadow of the old brick slaughterhouse. The building gave them some shelter from the rain, but Randy still trembled in the cold as she climbed out. Here? She asked. This is where you found him? Urquhart was staring off into the stockyard. It was a huge area, subdivided into a dozen pens along the railroad siding. There was a maze of chest-high fencing they called the runs between the slaughterhouse and the pens to force the cows into a single line and herd them along inside, where a man in a blood-splattered apron waited with a hammer in his hand. Here, Joe said, without looking back at her. So this is, for the cows, this is the killing fields. And for werewolves who would view humans as cattle, same way that some of the night people in Fever Dream to view humans as nothing more than livestock, so too does this become a killing field for Randy's father. There was a long silence. Somewhere far off, Randy thought she heard a faint, wild howl. But maybe that was just the wind and the rain. Do you believe in ghosts? She asked Joe. Ghosts? The chief sounded distracted. She shivered. It's like I can feel him, Joe. Like he's still here. After all this time. Still watching over me. Joe Urquhart turned toward her. His face was wet with rain or maybe tears. I watched over you, he said. He asked me to watch over you, and I did. I did my best. And 1 second, I'm just going to take a quick drink. Oh, yeah. Very Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, because I also mentioned that in part one of the stream. So this story came out, the story about flaying people and wearing their skin, came out a year after the book version of Silence of the Lambs. And then 2 years later, after this, 1991, is when we get the film version with Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. But yeah, this is like Clarice. Yeah, the hearing the lambs cry. But here it's, this was cattle. But still, definitely the same feel. And promise me, Joe. Is that like a promise me, Ned? But this is more of a just like promise you'll watch out for my daughter in case anything ever happens to me. Which is most likely Joe Urquhart might have been her godfather because of that. I don't think it's strange if cops who were partners, I don't know, I'm not a police officer, if someone knows police or works, if that's like sort of a thing, especially if partners are close like that, just watch out for my kid, I'll watch out for your kid, you watch out for mine. Randy heard a sound somewhere off in the night. She turned her head, frowning, listening. Tires crunched across gravel, and she saw headlights outside the fence. Another car coming. You and your father, you're a lot alike. Stubborn. Won't listen to nobody. I took good care of you, didn't I take good care of you? I got my own kids, but you never wanted nothing, did you? So why the hell didn't you listen to me? By then, Randy knew. She wasn't surprised. Somehow, she felt as though she'd known for a long time. There was only one phone call that night, she said. You were the one who phoned for backup, not Dad. Urquhart nodded. He was caught for a moment in the headlights of the oncoming car, and Randy saw the way his jaw trembled as he worked to get out the words. Look in the glove box, he said. Randy opened the door, sat on the edge of the seat, and did as he said. The glove compartment was unlocked. Inside, there was a bottle of aspirin, a tire pressure gauge, some maps, and a box of cartridges. Randy opened the box and poured some bullets out into her palm. They glimmered pale and cold in the car's faint dome light. She left the box on the seat, climbed out, kicked the door shut. My silver bullets, she said. I hadn't expected them quite so soon. Those are the ones Frank ordered, made up 18 years ago, Joe said. After he was buried, I went by the gunsmith and picked them up. Like I said, you and him were a lot alike. The second car pulled to a stop, pitting her in its high beams. Randy threw a hand across her eyes against the glare. She heard a car door opening and closing. Urquhart's voice was anguished. I told you to stay away from this thing, damn it. I told you. Don't you understand? They own this city. He's right. You should have listened, Rogoff said as he stepped into the light. Willie groped his way down the long, dark hall with one hand on the wall, placing each foot carefully in front of the last. The stone was so thick that even the sound of the rain did not reach him. There was only the echo of his careful footsteps and the rush of blood inside his ears. The silence within the old house was profound and unnerving, and there was something about the walls that bothered him as well. It was cold, but the stones under his fingers were moist and curiously warm to the touch, and Willie was glad for the darkness. Finally, he reached the base of the tower, where shafts of dim light fell across crabbed, narrow stone steps that spiraled up and up and up. Willie began to climb. He counted the steps at first, but somewhere around 200 he lost the count, and the rest was a grim ordeal that he endured in silence. More than once he thought of changing. He resisted the impulse. His legs ached from the effort when he reached the top. He sat down on the steps for a moment, his back to a slick stone wall. He was breathing hard, but when he groped for his inhaler, it was gone. He'd probably lost it in the woods. He could feel his lungs constricting in panic, but there was no help for it. So this is how I imagine climbing the high tower must be in an era without elevators or escalators. Oh my God, all these stairs. I wish I could find the guy who invented stairs and push him down all these stairs. And that's why Leighton Hightower hasn't come down from the top of the high tower in 10 years. He's never going to make that walk again. I made it to the top. There ain't no going back down from here. Willie got up. The room smelled of blood and urine and something else, a scent he did not place, but somehow it made him tremble. There was no roof. Willie realized that the rain had stopped while he'd been inside. He looked up as the clouds parted, and a pale white moon stared down. And all around the other moons shimmered into life, reflected in the tall, empty mirrors that lined the chamber. They reflected the sky above and each other, moon after moon after moon, until the room swam in silvered moonlight and reflections of reflections of reflections. Willie turned around in a slow circle, and a dozen other Willies turned with him. The moonstruck mirrors were streaked with dried blood, and above them, a ring of cruel iron hooks curved up from the stone walls. A human skin hung from one of them, twisting slowly in some wind he could not feel. And as the moonlight hit it, it seemed to writhe and change, from woman to wolf to woman, both and neither. That was when Willie heard the footsteps on the stairs. So, if we ever want to know what is down in the Dreadfort, it's probably something like this. And then it goes, Willie is a werewolf, though the others of our story here are the werewolves. And it said, figure after figure, moon after moon, a dozen Willies. The others all look alike, said to be like six. The others that show up in the prologue, like six twins, six brothers, all looking alike on their own. So here we got a dozen Willies, so a dozen werewolves, and then there's this skin, a flayed skin on an iron hook. But when the moonlight hits it, it no longer looks like skin, because you can see, even without wearing it, you can see the shape-shifting aspects of this skin cloak. The silver bullets were a bad idea, Rogoff said. We have a local ordinance here. The police get immediate notice anytime someone places an order for custom ammunition. Your father made the same mistake. The pack takes a dim view of silver bullets. Randy felt strangely relieved. For a moment, she'd been afraid that Willie had betrayed her, that he'd been one of them after all, and that thought had been like poison in her soul. Her fingers were still curled tight around a dozen of the bullets. She glanced down at them, so close and yet so far. Even if they're still good, you'll never get them loaded in time, Rogoff said. You don't need the bullets, Urquhart told her. He just wants to talk. They promised me, honey. No one needs to get hurt. Yeah, right. Because we're going to accept that, right? We're going to accept that. So, yeah, anyone who's saying, like, when it comes to, like, the all-cop ACAB mantra, our two cop characters that we had in the story, because Randy's technically not a cop, she's a PI. One's on the take and the other is a werewolf, which also means he's also on the take. And the one good cop, Frank, Randy's father, the one who didn't accept the narrative that Roy Hellender killed those kids, he's dead. And the night he dies, he calls for backup. No response. No one comes to see him. No help. And it's like that seems to be like how good cops who are you either get behind and you sync up and you form that blue wall of silence, or you get forced out. That's why like good cops don't last long. And they can say like, it's not all cops. Not all cops are bad. It's like you shouldn't let a few bad apples thing. But here's the thing, right? A few bad apples spoils the bunch. That's why what you do with bad apples, right, is you remove them from the bunch so that they can't infect the others, right? You throw the bad apple in the garbage where it belongs. You don't put it on desk duty. You don't send it to another bush, and you don't send it to another bunch of apples in another city. So that you don't send it away to go join up with another bushel of apples. No, the good apples. It's the good apples that are forced out, and the bunch just gets more rotten and more rotten and rotten. So it's like you, even if you're not like, there's dirty cops and there's cops who look the other way, which again means that there are bad cops. And it's like, why are there no good cops? It was like, well, there are. They try to be. They just don't tend to last long. Not without making some serious compromises that sully them later on down the line. And yeah, nobody's perfect, but still. It's like there are no solutions. There's just compromises. And that's what we seem to get. So Randy opened her hand. The bullets fell to the ground. She turned to Joe Urquhart. You were my father's best friend. He said you had more guts than any man he ever knew. They don't give you any choice, Urquhart said. I had kids of my own. They said if Roy Hellender took the fall, no more kids would vanish. They promised they'd take care of it. But if we kept pressing, one of my kids would be the next to go. That's how it works in this town. Everything would have been all right, but Frank just wouldn't let it alone. And that right there, too, was like, even if you want to stand up and be brave, and even if you're willing to go down for your beliefs, they'll still find something. They'll find that chink in your armor, right? And if it's not you, well, then it's like, well, then we'll hurt people you love. We'll hurt the people that you care about. Fall in line. And if it's not you that we have to make suffer, then it's someone you care about. We'll make them suffer. And that's how you end up with people who are able to go day by day doing this kind of work and being able to look the other way and justify it to themselves. That it's like, well, I know it's wrong, but what am I going to do? If I speak up, even if they kill me, yeah, they might kill me, but they'll also kill my son, my daughter, my wife, my brother. the list goes on. The list goes on, and that's and as humans, being social creatures as we are, most people. Now, you do have your occasional person who's a true loner, but most people have at least one person that they care about, and that always becomes but having one person is a liability, right? You don't want to look at it like that, but it is. If there's ever a time or a place where someone needs to have some kind of dirt on you, they will find it. If it's not something like some bullshit you did, then they'll find something that's close to you that hurting it will definitely hurt you, or that you want to preserve. So that's how it works in this town. Everything would have been all right, but Frank just wouldn't let it alone. And and it's like, and that's why we won't get the Epstein files, right? That's why they're never going to name the names, because the names that are on that list have dirt on other powerful names. We only kill in self-defense, Rogoff said. There's a sweetness to human flesh, yes. A power that's undeniable, but it's not worth the risk. What about the children? Randy said. Will someone please think of the children? Did you kill them in self-defense too? That was a long time ago, Rogoff said. Joe stood with his head downcast. And we still don't know. We still don't know who killed. Since Hellender was just a patsy, we still don't know who killed those kids all them years ago. Joe stood with his head downcast. He was beaten, Randy saw, and she realized that he'd been beaten for a long time. All those trophies on his walls, but somehow she knew that he had given up hunting forever on the night her father died. And then this is also just like George does the same thing. We just replace cops with knights in A Song of Ice and Fire, and that's essentially the story of the Hound, right? But the Hound is not a knight. He despises knights. He hates that Sansa has this view of the world of noble chivalrous knights, when he himself knows, well, my brother Gregor Clegane the Mountain is a knight, and look what he did. He burned my face. He killed the prince's children. He raped and murdered the prince's wife. It's like, tell me, is that chivalrous? Is that a true knight? So right, same concept, just different terms, but the idea is still the same. It was his son, Joe muttered quietly in a voice full of shame. Stephen's never been right in the head. Everyone knows that. He was the one who killed the kids, ate them. It was horrible. Harmon told me so himself, but he still wasn't going to let us have Stephen. He said he'd control Stephen's appetites if we closed the case. He was as good as his word, too. He put Stephen on medication, and it stopped. The murder stopped. So, good old nepotism. Rich man's son commits a crime. Rich man's son does no time. It ain't me. It ain't me. I ain't no fortunate one. No, I ain't no fortunate son. And when the cops are already on the take, it's easy to bury these things, sweep them under the rug, find a patsy like Roy Hellender, grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, weird kid from a poor family, had already had problems. It's like, yeah, put him away, and we can maintain this lie, and then the murders will stop. But they didn't stop, though, because after Roy Hellender went away, there was still a fifth murder. And they tried to say that one was unrelated to all of the other cases. And it's like, timeline got fucked up. No, it didn't. It's because he didn't do it. So either Stephen did kill again, or something happened, but it wasn't Roy. It wasn't Roy. She ought to hate Joe Urquhart, she realized, but instead she pitied him. After all this time, he still didn't understand. Joe, he lied. It was never Stephen. It was Stephen. It had to be. He's insane. The rest of them, you could do business with them, Randy. Listen to me now. You can talk to them. Like you did. Like Barry Schumacher. Urquhart nodded. That's right. They're just like us. They got some crazies, but not all of them are bad. So this is... right? So like every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin. We know that the Harmons, in order to keep the pure blood of the werewolf, they've basically been inbreeding, or at the very least, it's just very, very close marriages, all within these same 4 werewolf families: the Harmons, the Flambeaus, the Roquemonts, and the Anders. But then, yeah, and then of course there's also the Roose and Ramsay aspect to it. Ramsay's nuts. Roose, someone who on the surface you can do business with, dirty business, shady business, but at the same time, Roose is not above. He's not above the things Ramsay does. He's not mad at Ramsay. He's not disappointed in Ramsay for the crimes that he commits, for the murders and the rapes. He's mad because Ramsay doesn't keep them quiet the way Roose would do. Like when Roose was young, like the mill owner's wife and all of that, right? It's not that's why Roose Bolton likes a peaceful home, a quiet people. That's his saying. So they're just, you can't blame them for taking care of their own. We do the same thing, don't we? Look at Mike here. He's a good cop. So I just say, yeah, the blue wall of silence. We take care of our own. And this guy meeting us at the abandoned pack with a gun, he's a good cop. Yeah, he's a werewolf. Yeah, he knows who really killed those kids. Yeah, he knows he flagged you for ordering silver bullets, but he's a good guy. A good cop who's going to change into a wolf in a minute or two and tear out my throat. Randy, honey, listen to me. It doesn't have to be like that. You can walk out of here. Just say the word. I'll get you onto the force. You can work with us. Help us too, to keep the peace. Your father's dead. You won't bring him back, and the Hellender boy, he deserved what he got. He was killing them, skinning them alive. It was self-defense. Stephen is sick. He's always been sick. Rogoff was watching her from beneath his tangle of black hair. He still doesn't get it, she said. She turned back to Joe. Stephen is sicker than you think. Something is missing. 2 inbred, maybe? Think about it. Anders and Roquemonts, Flambeaus and Harmons, the 4 great founding families, all werewolves, marrying each other generation after generation to keep the lines pure. For how many centuries? They kept the lines pure, all right. They bred themselves, Stephen. He didn't kill those children. Roy Hellender saw a wolf carry off his sister, and Stephen can't change into a wolf. He got the bloodlust. He got inhuman strength. He burns at the touch of silver. But that's all. The last of the purebloods can't work the change. And I compare this to like this is like if a Targaryen couldn't bond with a dragon, right? It's like something's off. Something's not right here. Inbreeding leads to much, 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 much worse complications than any sort of benefit that it could have. And we've seen from House of the Dragon and Fire and Blood, it doesn't take a full-blooded pure blood Targaryen to bond with a dragon. Sometimes a drop will do you, but that doesn't change the mindset, right, of you got to keep the blood pure. Well, that mindset in this case has landed us with Stephen Harmon, who can't pull off the change. All this eugenics breeding program, keeping it in the family, keeping the blood pure. He is pure werewolf, father a werewolf, mother presumably werewolf. I don't know. We never see her in the story. I don't know what happened to her. but presumably she was also a werewolf, yet he can't pull off the change. And so he has to fall back on skinning. And that's why there's two victims here, right? So one, it's Roy Hellender getting revenge, but then he winds up dead. And now there's Steven trying to pull off becoming a werewolf, the thing his father always wanted, but he can only do it by wearing someone else's skin. He needs someone else's power to get something that he was denied. Why do you think you never found any remains? Randy put in. Steven didn't kill those kids. His father carried them off up to Blackstone. The old man had some crazy idea that if Steven ate enough human flesh, it might fix him, might make him whole, Rogoff said. It didn't work, Randy said. She took Willie's note out of her pocket, let the pages flutter to the ground. It was all there. She'd finished reading it before she'd gone down to meet Joe. Frank Wade's little girl was nobody's fool. It didn't work, Rogoff echoed. But by then, Jonathan had got the taste. Once you get started, it's hard to stop. He looked at Randy for a long time, as if he were weighing something. Then he began. Okay, so this is what I want to bring back here. So, in A Song of Ice and Fire, Varamir Sixskins is trained by a man named Hagon, and Hagon tells him the 3 rules of skin changers, the 3 taboos, 3 things that you are not supposed to do because they are abomination. 1, do not mate with wolf as a wolf. 2, do not eat the flesh of man. And that goes without saying, whether as a wolf or as a human, you just don't do it. And the third, the big one, is you do not skin change other humans. And we know that Varamir Sixskins breaks all 3 of those rules. He has his 3 wolves. He'll skin change into them and have sex with others. Sometimes he'll even skin change the female wolf and take it. Okay, that's gross kink, but okay. But it happens. It happens. And Will, in this story, we have 3 characters who are each breaking at least one of these taboos. Willie is having sex with Joni as Wolf. Now, to be fair, Joni had been paralyzed from the waist down, and it was her regret that she couldn't make love. But when she would turn into a werewolf, just like how Willie no longer has his asthma in wolf form, she was no longer paralyzed. So as 2 wolves, they could mate. Given her relationship with Willie, it's plausible that if she had the ability to, were she physically able, she would have just had normal sex with him as a human. But still, they're mating as wolves. So Willie, I guess he's kind of half breaking the rule, right? Because it's more about consent, I guess we would say in this case. But since both individuals in this are werewolves, there is consent. Whereas with Varamir Sixskins, he's just taking advantage of an animal. So gross. And then, yeah, so then the other one's do not eat the flesh of man. Now, Jonathan Harmon has been broken that rule. He got a taste of he thought that by feeding human flesh to Steven, that might cure him. But in the process of gathering victims for him, he also gets a taste of the flesh. So meaning that when he got these kids and tasted their blood while he was wrangling them up, he ended up being the one to murder and eat them. Billy Stip. Yeah, saved Sour Billy Tipton in Fever Dream. He starts drinking human blood thinking it'll start to make him change. Yeah, and that's also we see that in Nosferatu and in Dracula. These familiars, even what they are working with the promise that they will be given this gift of being turned, and so they preemptively start prepping for that by drinking blood. Usually starts with small animals, but then they'll work their way up to humans. All to prepare for this change that this never going to happen. In Dracula and Nosferatu's case, they're never going to turn him. And then in Fever Dream, it's not even possible. It was a lot. They were lying to Billy the whole time. But anyway, yeah. So Jonathan Harmon breaks the rule of not eating human flesh. And then Stephen Harmon is the other one, the abomination. Thou shalt like it's a commandment. Thou shalt not skin change another human. But he essentially is doing that. He is wearing the skin of Zoe Anders. So he has killed someone, flayed their skin, and is now wearing it. So he has skin change Zoe to get her power to become a werewolf. So yeah, all three of the taboos have been broken in one form or another. Bran has broken two of the commandments, and then Varamir Sixskins, of course, just made a mockery of all of them. So then he began to change, and now we're switching back to Willie. So both of them, Rogoff and Willie, they're going werewolf. I'm going ghost. Sweet cold air filled his lungs, and his muscles and bones ran with fire as the transformation took hold. He'd shrugged out of pants and coat, and he heard the rest of his clothing rip apart as his body writhed. His flesh ran like hot wax, and he reformed, born anew. And again, I think if I imagine the transformation, I very much imagine the scene from An American Werewolf in London with all the cool practical effects. That's how I imagine this transformation goes. Now he could see and hear and smell. The tower room shimmered with moonlight, every detail clear and sharp as noon, and the night was alive with sound. The wind and the rain and the rustle of bats in the forest around them, and traffic sounds and sirens from the city beyond. He was alive and full of power, and something was coming up the steps. It climbed slowly, untiring, and its smells filled the air. The scent of blood hung all around it, and beneath he sensed an aftershave that masked an unwashed body, sweat and dried semen on its skin, a heavy tang of wood smoke in its hair. And under it all, the scent of sickness, sweetly rotten as a grave. Okay, so there was no reason to mention the smell of dried semen, but once again, we got to bring up like this whole Silence of the Lambs aspect and just how fucked up Stephen Harmon is, right? This is what makes him a Ramsay figure, right? This is just all the worst. It's not enough that you killed this woman and skinned her and are now wearing it, but apparently you're beating off to it too. I guess we have to come to this conclusion. So this is Ramsay and Reek, like the original Reek, like all rolled into one. And then Ramsay too, like Ramsay is a failure of a Bolton. He's a bastard, but he is insanely strong. He's got that psycho power when he fights. And this is very, very Ramsay Bolton, this Stephen Harmon. Willie backed all the way across the room, staring at the arched door, the growl rising in his throat. He bared long, yellowed teeth, and slobber ran between them. Stephen stopped in the doorway and looked at him. He was naked. The wolf's hot red eyes met his cold blue ones, and it was hard to tell which were more inhuman. For a moment, Willie thought that Stephen didn't quite comprehend, until he smiled and reached for the skin that twisted above him on an iron hook. Willie leapt. He took Stephen high in the back and bore him down with his hands still clutched around Zoe's skin. For a second, Willie had a clear shot at his throat, but he hesitated and the moment passed. Stephen caught Willie's foreleg in a pale, scarred fist and snapped it in half like a normal man might break a stick. The pain was excruciating. Then Stephen was lifting him, flinging him away. He smashed up hard against one of the mirrors and felt it shatter at the impact. Jagged shards of glass flew like knives, and one of them lanced through his side. So, yeah, red and blue, his fire red eyes, Steven's cold blue ones. And then, of course, this is us. If Steven is our Ramsey figure and Willie is our wolf, and he's a Lightbringer because he's Flambeau, that makes him a sort of Jon Snow figure. So this is our battle of the bastards, right? One is a wolf. One has to wear a skin to get the power. He can't get the skin on in time, but he's still inhumanly strong. So battle, not writing, will Battle of the Bastards happen in A Song of Ice and Fire? I'm not, not 100% sure, just because of the way Stannis' storyline's going. I guess it all depends on what exactly happens to Ramsay at the Battle of Ice, because according to Theon, Ramsay's the one leading this Frey, Bolton, Manderley army. So we'll have to see. Will Ramsay escape Stannis to fight another day, or will he go down there? And yeah, also it works here too, because these are, in Jonathan Harmon's eyes, who is our big werewolf, our big werewolf villain, overarching villain in this. He would look both at both Stephen and Willie as bastards in his eyes. Stephen is a failure of a son who can't enact the change, and Willie is a mutt because he's not pureblood. His mother was a regular human. His father, he's werewolf on his father's side, but he only has half the werewolf bloodline. But even as a half-breed, as Jonathan would probably call him, he's still unable to enact the change. So that probably also means that not only is Jonathan Harmon disgusted by Willie, he's also jealous of Willie because his own he can do something his pureblood son can't. That always makes. So I told this story before. I just want to relate this, and maybe people can relate to this too. So if you ever had like a friend whose family was significantly wealthier than you, and you go to their house for like the first time and you meet their parents, this ever happened to you? Happened to me. A friend of mine, we met in college. He went to private school his whole life. I went to public school. But we met in college. And I went to his house and I met his family, and his mother was asking me all kinds of questions like, "How am I doing?" I told her, "Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm doing this. I'm studying this. I made Dean's List," and I'm telling her my grades. And she goes like, "Oh, where'd you go to high school? Where'd you go to school?" And I told her, North. It was the public school. I don't want to give away where I went, but I went to public school. And then she looked at her son and she said, "Wow. Why are his grades better than yours?" Not, why aren't you doing as good as him? Why is he doing better than you? Like I was somehow lesser because I went to public school and he went to private. And I could see the look on his face. He's like, so sorry. And I'm like, dude, she just fucking insulted both of us at the same time. But yeah, like I'm supposed to be some kind of like redneck peasant because I went to, but yeah, so the elite, the elitism, right? So that's what Jonathan Harmon's got that same view because Willie's a half-breed, but he can make the change. He can go full wolf and his own son can't. And then Jonathan Harmon also has to cope with the fact that he has a taste for human flesh that he now has to fight off all the time. So he is also fallen for his own weak, as high and mighty as he is, he's covering up his own weakness, right? It's like he's like an alcoholic who keeps everything won't admit it, right? Keep that buried away. This is another skeleton to pack into the closets, and we can't close the doors anymore. There's too many skeletons. That's what's happening with Jonathan Harmon. Okay, so just an avalanche of skeletons coming out of the closet door. So Willie backed all the way across the room. No, that we read this. So fluid knives, and one of them lanced through his side. Yeah. So, and they're fighting in basically a hall of mirrors. So this is so there's just glass everywhere. This is a worse place to have a fight. Everything. the walls themselves are literally weapons. Willie rolled away. The glass spear broke under him and he whimpered. Across the room, Stephen was getting to his feet. He put out a hand to steady himself. Willie scrambled up. His broken leg was knitting already, though it hurt when he put his weight on it. Glass fragments clawed inside him with every step. He could barely move. Some fucking werewolf he turned out to be. Let me get a... peach tea. Stephen was adjusting his ghastly cloak, pulling flaps of skin down over his own face. The skin trade, Willie thought giddily. Yeah, that was it. And in a moment, Stephen would use that damn flayed skin to do what he could never manage on his own. He would change, and then Willie would be meat. And yeah, this is a reminder that the Harmon family, the original Harmons, when they came over, they made their fortunes first through the skin trade. Nowadays, they own all the newspapers and the plants and everything, but the way they first made their money was through skins and pelts, beaver trapping, that kind of stuff. Willie came at him, jaws gaping, but too slow. Stephen's foot pished him down, caught him hard enough to take his breath away, pinned him to the floor. Willie tried to squirm free, but Stephen was too strong. He was bearing down, crushing him. All of a sudden, Willie remembered that dog so many years ago. Willie bent himself almost double and took a bite out of the back of Stephen's calf. The blood filled his mouth, exploding inside him. Stephen reeled back. Willie jumped up, darted forward, bit him again. This time, he sank his teeth in good and held, worrying at the flesh. The pounding in his head was thunderous. He was full of power. He could feel it swelling within him. Suddenly, he knew that he could tear Stephen apart. He could taste the fine, sweet flesh close to the bone, could hear the music of his screams, and could imagine the way it would feel when he held him in his jaws and shook him like a rag doll and felt the life go out of him in a sudden giddy rush. It swept over him, and Willie bit and bit and bit again, ripping away chunks of meat, drunk on blood. No, Willie, stop! You go too far and you eat his flesh, you're going to break another rule. And then, dimly, he heard Stephen screaming in a high, shrill, thin voice, a little boy's voice. No, Daddy, he was whining over and over. No, please don't bite me, Daddy. Don't bite me anymore. Willie let him go and backed away. Stephen sat on the floor sobbing. He was bleeding like a son of a bitch. Pieces were missing from thigh, calf, shoulder, and foot. His legs were drenched in blood. 3 fingers were gone off his right hand. His cheeks were slimy with gore. Yeah, so, you know what they say, a little childhood trauma builds character. But, yeah, so it seems like this goes way, way beyond just Stephen being a failure in his father's eyes. One can only imagine what kind of shit his dad put him through trying to force this change on him. So the mental, physical, verbal abuse, it's not just force feeding him to make him eat human flesh. There had to be all kinds of other abuse going on here, trying to enact a change. You know, we were talking to Bruce Bolton. We could also think of like Randall Tarley and the things he did to Sam, like making him bathe in a bath of bull's blood and all that stuff. The things that dads do to toughen up their boys, I guess we would say. But here it's like trying to enact a werewolf change. And possibly when Ramsey finally did leave his mother's place and went to live at the Dread Fort full time, what was Roos enacting on him? Or was it really anything? It seems more like was Ramsey left more in the care of Reek, and Roos was more of an absentee father. But who knows what goes on behind the walls of the Dread Fort? Suddenly, Willie was scared. For a moment, he didn't understand. Stephen was beaten. He could see that. He could rip out his throat or let him live. It didn't matter. It was over. But something was wrong. Something was terribly, sickeningly wrong. It felt as though the temperature had dropped 100 degrees, and every hair on his body was prickling and standing on end. What the hell was going on? He growled low in his throat and backed away toward the door, keeping a careful eye on Stephen. Stephen giggled. You'll get it now. You called it. You got blood on the mirrors. You called it back again. The room seemed to spin. Moonlight ran from mirror to mirror to mirror, dizzyingly. Or maybe it wasn't moonlight. Willie looked into the mirrors. The reflections were gone. Willie, Stephen, the moon, all gone. There was blood on the mirrors, and they were full of fog, a silvery pale fog that shimmered as it moved. Something was moving through the fog, sliding from mirror to mirror to mirror, around and around, something hungry that wanted to get out. He saw it, lost it, saw it again. It was in front of him, behind him, off to the side. It was a hound, gaunt and terrible. It was a snake, scaled and foul. It was a man with eyes like pits and knives for its fingers. It wouldn't hold still. Every time he looked, its shape seemed to change, and each shape was worse than the last, more twisted and obscene. Everything about it was lean and cruel. Its fingers were sharp, so sharp, and he looked at them and felt their caress sliding beneath his skin, tingling along the nerves, pain and blood and fire trailing behind them. It was black, blacker than black, blacker than the blacker than the blackest black times infinity. A black that drank all light forever, and it was all shining silver too. It was a nightmare that lived in a funhouse mirror, the thing that hunts the hunters. So he could feel the evil throbbing through the glass. Skinner, Stephen called. The surface of the mirror seemed to ripple and bulge, like a wave cresting on some quicksilver sea. The fog was thinning. Willie realized with sudden terror he could see it clearer now, and he knew it could see him. And suddenly, Willie Flambeau knew what was happening, knew that when the fog cleared, the mirrors wouldn't be mirrors anymore. They'd be doors, doors, and the Skinner would come. Yeah. One of Ramsey's crews called Skinner. So how did this thing get into Willie's house despite it being all locked up? It got in through the men's room mirror. The mirror and the ladies, because Willie lives in an old brewery. So there's a men's and a women's bathroom back from when the brewery was in operation. The women's bathroom mirror is broken, but the men's bathroom mirror is still intact. So that is how the Skinner got into his house. It was through the bathroom mirror. And we could see, the Skinner is able to hop from mirror to mirror to mirror, and this whole room is made of mirrors. But then it's also the fog. So this is like, if we bring this back to the others in A Song of Ice and Fire, as Foreman Giantsbane tells us, the others never really go away. They come out at night, but even during the day, they're still around. They're in a fog. And if the others come from the trees, then the idea of the Skinner jumping from mirror to mirror is like the others sort of jumping from tree to tree to tree. Every tree in the forest could be a potential enemy. That's also why George makes use of the soldier pines as trees. George loves his wordplay, and that's the double entendre. Every tree is a potential warrior, and that could also draw off of like the Ents and also George. He was a conscientious objector during the Vietnam War. But if anyone who knows about Vietnam, like sometimes you hear like, look out for Charlie, he's in the trees, because of the way like the Viet Cong could just fade in and out. What language do your trees speak? The trees, they speak Vietnamese. Everyone's brave until the tree shouts Diddy Mao. But yeah, like the trees themselves are warriors, and this is drawn from like real world warfare tactics and fantasy elements here. So the Skidder would come sliding forward through the ruins of his clothing, slitted eyes glowing like embers from a muzzle black as coal. He was half again as large as Willie had been, his fur thick and black and shaggy, and when he opened his mouth, his teeth gleamed like ivory daggers. Okay, so we're back to Randy and Rogoff is his eyes. Okay, so all the werewolves seem to have red eyes, but Rogoff's werewolf form is black, so black and shaggy. So Shaggy Dog, Rickon's direwolf, only red eyes instead of the green eyes. Randy edged backward along the side of the car. The knife was in her hand, moonlight running off the silver blade, but somehow it didn't seem like very much. Oh yeah, and of course, every time we think of like this moonlight gleaming off the silver blades, it's reminiscent of the others and their very thin, razor sharp ice swords. And then the Skitter's fingers are literally knives. So in classic horror sense too, because George loves his schlock horror, it's like its hands are like Freddy Krueger gloves. So the huge black wolf advanced on her, his tongue lolling between his teeth, and she put her back up against the car door and braced herself for his leap. Joe Urquhart stepped between them. No, not her too. You owe me. Talk to her. Give her a chance. I'll make her see how it is. The wolf growled a warning. I don't think he can talk in that form. Urquhart stood his ground, and all of a sudden he had his revolver out, and he was holding it in two shaky hands, drawing a bead. Stop. I mean it. She didn't have time to load the goddamn silver bullets, but I've had 18 fucking years. I'm the fucking police chief in this fucking city, and you're under arrest. Shouting at a werewolf, stop in the name of the law. Randy put her hand on the door handle, eased it a moment. And it's like when cops too, like when the criminal is running and cops shout freeze, right? And it's like, oh yeah, because he's already on the run. Oh, freeze. Oh yeah, he said freeze. I guess I got to stop, right? I guess I got it. It's gonna stop. You violated the law. Randy put her hand on the door handle, eased it open. For a moment, the wolf stood frozen, baleful red eyes fixed on Joe. She thought it was... Stop, that's illegal. Yeah. She thought it was actually going to work. She remembered her father's old Wednesday night poker games. He'd always said Joe, unlike Barry Schumacher, ran one hell of a bluff. Then the wolf threw back his head and howled, and all the blood went out of her. She knew that sound. She'd heard it in her dreams 1,000 times. It was in her blood, that sound, an echo from far off and long ago, when the world had been a forest and humans had run naked in fear before the hunting pack. So here again we see this idea of the forest is the end of the world. The forest is the darkness, and it masks all the monsters in the night that humans fear, especially going back to that stuff, whatever is in our blood now that makes us fear the dark, that makes us fear the uncanny valley. And yeah, anything, and something that looks human but isn't quite human, and others fit that mold. Vampires fit that mold. Zombies fit that mold. Werewolves fit that mold because they are human. Because they can look human, and then they can turn into monsters. And these werewolves can do it at a moment's notice. It echoed off the side of the old slaughterhouse and trembled out over the city, and they must have heard it all over the flats. Heard it and glanced outside nervously and checked their locks before they turned up the volumes on their TVs. Randy opened the door wider and slid one leg inside the car as the wolf leapt. Oh, shit. There was George, I think, might be drawing on some other real world dark events. Forget the context, but there was an attack on the street, and people could hear the victim screaming, and rather than anyone going out and help, they ignored it. People would turn their radios louder, draw their shades, turn their TVs up. They would pretend not to hear because nobody wanted to deal with it. And Randy's just said the same thing. Because the slaughterhouse is abandoned, but that doesn't mean that the houses around it are abandoned. People are probably hearing this. Oh, I think a great comparison would be in Stephen King's It. The way the adults in Derry, Maine, always kind of turn around and pretend like nothing's going on. In the remake, right, when the kid is drug underneath the sewers, and that lady looks out her window and then just keeps walking, then walks off like you didn't just see some little kid out in his big yellow duck rain jacket out there just a moment ago, and now he's completely gone. Yeah, that just pretend it didn't happen. Yeah, it is the perfect example of people who do this, who turn a blind eye and pretend that they can't see or hear what's going on around them. She heard Randy open the door wider and slid one leg inside the car as the wolf leapt. She heard Urquhart fire and fire again, and then the wolf slammed into his chest and smashed him back against the car door. Yeah, and the other point is, for some people who live in certain neighborhoods, right, you hear gunshots, and it's and it happens so often, it just becomes you somehow you learn to deal, right? And it's well, it doesn't involve me, so I'm not getting involved. Randy was half into the and especially during the time that George is writing this, during the time of recession, during the spikes in crime that went up in the late 70s, early 80s. This may have been, for some cities, some neighborhoods, these types of things were probably everyday occurrences. Randy was half into the car, but the doors, obviously not werewolves, but shootings and drive-bys and shit like that. Randy was half into the car, but the door swung shut hard, crunching down on her left foot with awful force. She heard a bone break under the impact and shrieked at the sudden flare of pain. Outside, Urquhart fired again, and then he was screaming. There were ripping sounds and more screams, and something wet spattered against her ankle. Her foot was trapped, and the struggle outside slammed her open door against it again and again and again. Each impact was a small explosion as the shattered bones grated together and ripped against raw nerves. Joe was screaming, and droplets of blood covered the tinted window like rain. Her head swam, and for a moment Randy thought she'd faint from the pain, but she threw all her weight against the door and moved it just enough and drew her foot inside, and when the next impact came, it slapped the door shut hard, and Randy pressed the lock. She leaned against the wheel and almost threw up. Joe had stopped screaming, but she could hear the wolf tearing at him, ripping off chunks of flesh. Once you get started, it's hard to stop, she thought hysterically. Once you pop, you just can't stop. I'm just going to open this bag, and I'm only going to eat one potato chip. And then I'm going to close the bag and put it away. You never stop at one chip. She got out the .38, cracked the cylinder with shaking hands, flicked out the shells. Then she was fumbling around on the front seat. She found the box, tipped it over, snatched up a handful of silver. It was silent outside. Randy stopped, looked up. He was on the hood of the car. Willie changed. He was running on instinct now. He didn't know why he did it. He just did. The pain was there waiting for him along with his humanity, as he'd known it would be. It shrieked through him like a gale wind and sent him whimpering to the floor. He could feel the glass shard under his ribs, dangerously close to a lung, and his left arm bent sickeningly downward at a place it was never meant to bend. And when he tried to move it, he screamed and bit his tongue and felt his mouth fill with blood. The fog was a pale, thin haze now, and the mirror closest to him bulged outward, throbbing like something alive. Stephen sat against the wall, his blue eyes bright and avid, sucking his own blood from the stumps of his fingers. Changing won't help, he said in that weird flat tone of his. Skinner don't care. It knows what you are. Once it's called, it's got to have a skin. Willie's vision was blurry with tears, but he saw it again then in the mirror behind Stephen, pushing at the fading fog, pushing, trying to get through. So this is like it reminds me of the legend of Muramasa's blades. Once they're drawn, the sword cannot be sheathed again until it has tasted blood. You can't. Muramasa's swords were cursed. He staggered to his feet. Pain roared through his head. He cradled his broken arm against his body, took a step toward the stairs, and felt broken glass grind against his bare feet. He looked down. Pieces of the shattered mirror were everywhere. And Elric, you can't just draw that sword and not kill someone. Come on. You pull that sword out like someone's gonna die today. You can't just point Stormbringer at someone like it's a gun and just expect it to be an empty threat. Like, no. You draw that sword. It's meant. It's on. It's on. Willie's head snapped up. He looked around wildly, dizzy, counting. 6, 7, 8, 9. The 10th was broken. 9 then. He threw himself forward, slammed all his body weight into the nearest mirror. It shattered under the impact, disintegrated into 1,000 pieces. Willie crunched the biggest shards underfoot, stamped on them until his heels ran wet with blood. Holy Christ, okay. He's all right. The only way to defeat this thing, you have to break all the mirrors, but even the glass shards are enough. So then you gotta grind them into powder, and all he has to do this is his own body. Whew. Damn. All right. Let's talk about death by 1,000 cuts, right? He was moving without thought. He combed the room, using his own body as a weapon, hearing the sweet tinkling music of breaking glass. The sword without a hilt metaphor, right? Like, it's going to cut us both. The world turned into a red fog of pain, and 1,000 little knives sliced at him everywhere. And he wondered if the Skinner came through and got him, whether he'd even be able to tell the difference. Then he was... Willie is essentially flaying himself to try and defeat this thing. This is giving the... This is giving the bridge arc in Naruto when they fought Haku. Okay. Okay, so some people may have heard this from me before. And if you've seen the World in Ice and Fire Wojak video I did, I also I've referenced this with the Blood Raven's Cave. my constant that George is a secret weeb thing. Okay. So all right. So old man with one red eye and a connection to a fire family extends his life beyond natural means by hooking himself up to the root system of a magical tree in an underground cave, takes a crippled young boy to be his protege, teaches him to open his third eye, and they are attended to by a race of plant people who more than likely have their own dubious motives. Now, did I just describe Bloodraven and Bran, or did I just describe Madara and Obito Uchiha? Think about it. Oh, and there's crows. There's so much crow metaphor with the Uchihas. Tachi summons crows. Yeah. God, yeah. That's why. Oh man, that's why I don't. I love the idea that the others are actually the children's mistake, because it's like Zetsu trying to bring back Kaguya, right? Yeah. There just comes a point where some things become so similar you have to wonder, George, are you watching anime? Okay, so Willie blinked and wiped the blood away with his good hand. His old raincoat was underneath him, blood-soaked and covered with ground glass. And peering nervously out through the darkness, she glanced into the rearview mirror, but it was fogged up, useless. She shivered as much from cold as from fear. Where was he? She thought wildly. Then she saw him running toward the car. Randy looked down, chambered a bullet, and had a second in her fingers when he came flying over the hood and smashed against the glass. Cracks spider-webbed out from the center of the windshield. The wolf snarled at her. Slaver and blood smeared the glass. Then he hit the glass again. Randy jumped with every impact. The windshield cracked and cracked again. Then a big section in the center went milky and opaque. Wait, I skipped ahead? What did I miss? Oh, I did. So, okay, yeah. He cornered around the using his own back, whether he'd been able to. Then he was staggering away from another mirror, and white-hot needles were stabbing through his feet with every step, turning into fire as they lanced up his calves. He stumbled and fell hard. Flying glass had cut his face to ribbons, and the blood ran down into his eyes. Oh, so this is like, and this is sort of Weirwood stigmata. Willie blinked and wiped the blood away with his good hand. His old raincoat was underneath him, and blood-soaked and covered with ground glass and shards of mirror. Stephen stood over him, staring down. Behind him was a mirror, or was it a door? You missed one, Stephen said flatly. Something hard was digging to his gut, Willie realized. His hand fumbled around beneath him, slid into the pocket of his raincoat, closed on cold metal. Skinner's coming for you now, Stephen said. Willie couldn't see. The blood had filled his eyes again, but he could still feel. He got his fingers through the loops and rolled and brought his hand up fast and hard with all the strength he had left and put Mr. Scissors right through the meat of Stephen's groin. The last thing he heard was a scream and the sound of breaking glass. The same thing happens in the Sworn Sword when Dunk is fighting the Long Inch. And there's after he falls in the river and his visor is filled up with mud and blood, and he can't see anything, but he can feel. So yeah, George will reenact this again, and I wouldn't doubt if it comes back up in the main story, something similar. Calm, Randy thought. Calm. But the dread that filled her was more than simple fear. Blood matted his jaws, and his eyes stared at her through the windshield, glowing that hideous, baleful red. She looked away quickly, tried to chamber a bullet. Her hand shook, and it slid out of her grip onto the floor of the car. She ignored it, tried again. The wolf howled, turned, fled. For a moment, she lost sight of him. Randy craned her head around, peering nervously out through the darkness. She glanced into the rearview mirror, but it was fogged up, useless. She shivered as much from cold as from fear. Where was she? Where was he? She thought wildly. Then she saw him running toward the car. Randy looked down, chambered a bullet, and had a second in her fingers when he came flying over the hood and smashed against the glass. Cracks spiderwebbed out from the center of the windshield. The wolf snarled at her. Slobber and blood smeared the glass. Then he hit the glass again. Again. Randy jumped with every impact. The windshield cracked and cracked again, and then a big section in the center went milky and opaque. She had the second bullet in the cylinder. She slid in a third. It was freezing inside the car. She looked out into the darkness through a haze of cracks and blood smears, loaded a fourth bullet, and was closing the cylinder when he hit the windshield again, and it all caved in on her. One moment she had the gun, and the next it was gone. The weight was on her chest, and the safety glass, broken into a million milky pieces, but still clinging together, fell across her face like a shroud. Then it ripped away, and the blood-soaked jaws and hot red eyes were right there in front of her. The wolf opened his mouth, and she was feeling the furnace heat of his breath, smelling awful carnivore stench. "You fucker!" she screamed, and almost laughed, because it wasn't as much as last words go. Something sharp and silvery bright came sliding down through the back of his throat. It went so quickly, Randy didn't understand what was happening no more than he did. Suddenly, the bloodlust went out of the dark eyes, and they were full of pain and shock and finally fear. And she saw more silver knives sliding through his throat before his mouth filled with blood. And then the great black furred body shuddered and struggled. Damn, George, you and your fucking alliteration. Black furred body shuddered and struggled as something pulled it back off her, front paws beating a tattoo against the seat. There was a smell of burning hair in the air. When the wolf began to scream, it sounded almost human. Randy choked back her own pain, slammed her shoulder against the door, and knocked what was left of Joe Urquhart aside. Halfway out the door, she glanced back. The hand was twisted and cruel, and its fingers were long, bright silver razors, pale and cold and sharp as sin. Like 5 long, jointed knives, the fingers had sunk through the back of the wolf's neck and grabbed hold and pulled, and the blood was coming out between his teeth in great gouts now, and his legs were kicking feebly. It yanked at him then, and she heard a sickening wet crunching as the thing began to pull the wolf through the rear view mirror with an inexorable, unimaginable force to whatever was on the other side. The great black-furred body seemed to waver and shift for a second, and the wolf's face took on an almost human cast. When his eyes met hers, the red light had gone out of them. There was nothing there but pain and pleading. His first name was Mike, she remembered. Randy looked down. Her gun was on the floor. She picked it up, checked the cylinder, closed it, jammed the barrel up against his head, and fired 4 times. When she got out of the car and put her weight on her ankle, the pain washed over her in great waves. Randy collapsed to her hands and knees. She was throwing up when she heard the sirens. Yeah, milky and opaque. The milk, so milk glass, just as the others have milk glass bones. And the Skinner, Steven said, once it's called, it can't return until it skins a werewolf. So with Willie smashing all of the mirrors, it then goes, okay, well, where's the next closest mirror with a werewolf in sight? So then it jumps to the rear view mirror of Urquhart's car because that's the next closest mirror with a werewolf in sight. Some kind of animal, she said. The detective gave her a long, sour look and closed his notebook. That's all you can tell me, he said, that Chief Urquhart was killed by some kind of animal. Hey, that's all you, that was a story you were given about her dad's death, and you bought that. You bought that. How convenient stories aren't so convenient when they're used against you. Randy wanted to say something sharp, but she was all fucked up on painkillers. They'd had to put 2 pins in her, and it still hurt like hell, and the doctor said she'd have to stay another week. What do you want me to tell you? She said weakly. That's what I saw, some kind of animal. A wolf. The detective shook his head. Fine. So the chief was killed by some kind of animal, probably a wolf. So where's Rogoff? His car was there. His blood was all over the inside of the chief's car. So tell me, where the fuck is Rogoff? Randy closed her eyes and pretended it was the pain. I don't know, she said. I'll be back, the detective said when he left. She lay with her eyes closed for a moment, thinking maybe she could drift back to sleep until she heard the door open and close. He won't be, a soft voice told her. We'll see to it. Randy opened her eyes. At the foot of the bed was an old man with long white hair leaning on a gold wolf's head cane. He wore a black suit, a morning suit, and his hair fell to his shoulders. My name is Jonathan Harmon, he said. I've seen your picture. I know who you are and what you are. Her voice was hoarse. A lycanthrope. Please, he said. A werewolf. Willie. What happened to Willie? Stephen is dead, Jonathan Harmon said. Good, Randy spat. Stephen and Roy, they were doing it together, Willie said, for the skins. Stephen hated the others because they could work the change and he couldn't. But once your son had his skin, he didn't need Hellender anymore, did he? I can't say I will mourn greatly. To be frank, Stephen was never the sort of heir I might have wished for. He went to the window, opened the curtains, and looked out. This was once a great city, you know. A city of blood and iron. Now it's all turned to rust. Fuck your city. What about Willie? It was a pity about Zoe, but once the Skinner has been summoned, it keeps hunting until it takes a skin, from mirror to mirror to mirror. It knows our scent, but it doesn't like to wander far from its gates. I don't know how your mongrel friend managed to evade it twice, but he did, to Zoe's misfortune and Michael's. He turned and looked at her. You will not be so lucky. Don't congratulate yourself too vigorously, child. The pack takes care of its own. The doctor who writes your next prescription, the pharmacist who fills it, the boy who delivers it. Any one of them could be one of us. We don't forget our enemies, Miss Wade. Your family would do well to remember that. You were the one, she said with a certainty. In the stockyards, the night my father... Jonathan nodded curtly. He was a crack shot, I'll grant him that. He put 6 bullets in me. My war wounds, I call them. They still show up on x-rays, but my doctors have learned not to be curious. I'll kill you, Randy said. I think not. He leaned over the bed. Perhaps I'll come for you myself some night. You ought to see me, Miss Wade. My fur is white now, pale as snow, but the stature, the majesty, the power, those have not left me. Michael was a half-breed, and your Willie, he was hardly more than a dog. The pure blood is rather more. We are the dire wolves, the nightmares who haunt your racial memories, the dark shapes circling endlessly beyond the light of your fires. So yeah, white fur and red eyes. He is a white dire wolf. Jonathan Harmon in his werewolf form is Ghost. So this is like evil Jon Snow. And we've said when Jon Snow's coming back, Jon Snow's going to be resurrected, but it's going to be like, he's probably going to be more wolfish. Jon's coming back and he ain't going to be happy. He smiled down at her, then turned and walked away. At the door, he paused. Sleep well, he said. Randy did not sleep at all, not even when night fell and the nurse came in and turned out the lights. Despite all her pleading, she lay there in the dark, staring up at the ceiling, feeling more alone than she'd ever been. He was dead, she thought. Willie was dead, and she'd better start getting used to the idea. Very softly, alone in the darkness of the private room, she began to cry. She cried for a long time, for Willie and Joan Sorensen and Joe Urquhart, and finally, after all this time, for Frank Wade. She ran out of tears and kept crying, her body shaking with dry sobs. She was still shaking when the door opened softly and a thin knife of light from the hall cut across the room. "Who's there?" she said hoarsely. "Answer or I'll scream." The door closed quietly. "Shh, quiet or they'll hear." It was a young woman's voice, young, a little scared. "The nurse said I couldn't come in, that it was after visiting hours, but he told me to get to you right away." She moved close to the bed. Randy turned on her reading light. Her visitor looked nervously toward the door. She was dark, pretty, no more than 20, with a spray of freckles across her nose. "I'm Betsy Jitaker," she whispered. "Willie said I was to give you a message, but it's all crazy stuff." Randy's heart skipped a beat. "Willie, tell me. I don't care how crazy it sounds. Just tell me." "He said he couldn't phone you himself because the pack might be listening in, that he got hurt, but he's okay, that he's up north, and he's found this vet who's taking good care of him. I know it sounds funny, but that's what he said, a vet." so Willie's getting treated for his wounds, but probably in wolf form. Betsy nodded. "He sounded hurt on the phone and said he couldn't change right now, except for a few minutes to call, because he was hurt and the pain." "Oh, yeah. Oh, I was right. Yeah. He's staying in wolf form as long as possible." But to say that the vet had gotten most of the glass out and set his leg and he was going to be fine. And then he said that on the night he'd gone, he'd come by my house and left something for you, and I was to find it and bring it here. She opened her purse and rummaged around. "It was in the bushes by the mailbox. My little boy found it." Oh, and then Willie staying in wolf form to heal. That does seem to draw a parallel to Ghost being the sort of soul jar for John, keeping his soul safe until John can come back. But then when John does come back, he's going to have more of that wolfish edge to him. He ain't going to be as nice. He might be. And I think that's like supposed to be where George is going with. Same thing with Danny returning from the Dothraki Sea after presumably burning the calls. The voice of Quaithe telling her, like, "Remember who you are, be a dragon." I don't think Mad Queen Danny is going to happen, but I do think that John and Danny, when they do make their big returns, they're going to be a lot more stern. They're going to be a lot more willing to be violent as a means of crushing dissent. Like, Danny isn't going to be making compromises with slavers. No more marrying a man she hates to try and appease people who are beyond redemption. And then same with John. John's probably gonna, I could see him doing the show route like, "Well, my watch is over, I died," and being more like, "Okay, we're marching, like we're marching south, we're taking on the Bolt, like Ramsay Bolton's got to die." So she opened her purse and rummaged around. "It was in the bushes by the mailbox. My little boy found it." She gave it over. It was a piece of some broken mirror, Randy saw, a shard as long and slender as her finger. She held it in her hand for a moment, confused and uncertain. The glass was cold to the touch, and it seemed to grow colder as she held it. "Careful, it's real sharp," Betsy said. "There was one more thing. I don't understand it at all, but Willie said it was important. He said to tell you that there were no mirrors where he was, not a one. But last he'd seen, there were plenty up in Blackstone." Randy nodded, not quite grasping it. Not yet. She ran a finger thoughtfully along the shiny sliver of glass. "Oh, look," Betsy said. "I told you. Now you've gone and cut yourself." And that is the end of Skin Trade. Jonathan Harmon, I get that you're rich, but probably shouldn't fill your mansion with mirrors. Especially not when you know that a monster like the Skinner exists and is on the loose. So, hey, for Randy's sake, she might not have to worry for too long about Jonathan Harmon coming after her or going after anyone she cares about. Oh yeah, vets have to learn many more types of anatomy than just Oh yeah, too. Yeah, so I don't know if Willie's revealed his secret to this vet. Is this like okay? So for those who have ever seen like Better Call Saul, like the doctor that he would see, the one who doesn't ask questions, his front was that he was a vet. So maybe Willie is a debt collector and has no shady people and has shady friends. So maybe he found like one of those vets, one of those ones who's like doing, sir, like or like a Simpsons show, like I could give you the name of an unlicensed surgeon. Oh, that would be heavenly. Mo Sislak, that's right. I'm a surgeon. So man, Willie might have found one of those. But yeah, that is Skin Trade. And thank you for everyone who came out for the first one, and thanks for everyone who came out to part 2. Yeah, that story was a lot longer than I thought, and there's so much more to discuss because even these last 20 pages still took us just over 2 hours. But yeah, she literally just called the Skinner there. Yeah, blood on the glass is the way of summoning it. Yep. As long as Blackstone Manor is the closest place to her with a werewolf, hopefully the Skinner is targeting Jonathan Harmon and not the other Anders twin, the one that is still alive. So, but I think Randy knows. I think she knows what she's doing there. Okay, so tomorrow I will not be on with David Lightbringer, but you still go see Dave Stream. Will be with, I believe it's Hero with 1,000 Voices, and I think he's there in person. I know they're going to be doing the Queen. They're going to be talking about the Queenmaker chapter for Ariane. So good chapter. Not sure what my next thing will be. I know I'm working more on the doing reads of the Zothic Legend cycle, and I want to do more scripted readings, but also more live readings. I'm thinking maybe next live stream reading where will probably be another Mythos in A Song of Ice and Fire. I'm thinking The Thing on the Doorstep. That is a story. That is a Lovecraft tale about essentially skin changing humans. The main villain is a woman. It's one of the few stories where the main character is one of the few Lovecraft stories where the main character is a woman, and it's a woman who comes from Innsmouth. So she is eventually going to be a deep one, but right now she is essentially hodoring a man, and that's one I might want to do a live reading of, so we can stop and discuss like some more of the A Song of Ice and Fire parallels where George started getting some of these ideas, because there are Lovecraft stories that are involve essentially skin changing. The Thing on the Doorstep and The Whisper in Darkness are the two big ones, but The Whisper in Darkness is a whole novella, so that would take hours upon hours. But we'll probably do The Thing on the Doorstep sometime soon. All right, and then so thank you for joining me. Damon thanks you, and you didn't see him, but Dagan just ran by, skittered across on the floor, so a lot of the kitties are down here. And yeah, we're going to call it here. I will see you next time. So peace out. Have a good night.